So it might make sense that the fastest person is going to be the one to win the race, but that is not always the case, and that's especially true in races like cross country. So when it comes to running fast, physiologically speaking, even pace is the most efficient way to run a race. And this is especially true when it comes to running for time. Like if you look at any world record attempt, there's going to be some combination of pacers out there in front of the field, or pacing lights on the rail. It makes sense. The less you have to change paces, your body just has to stick to one gear, the less energy you'll waste and the more energy you'll be able to use just on running as fast as you can. But the thing is, you can't run even pace every single race. It's just not going to work. There are conditions that are going to come up that are going to make it difficult. In races like track, it's definitely a lot more feasible. Your surface that you're running on is, flat all the way through the race. It's consistent all the way through the race. You know exactly where you are, where your markers are. Everything's measured out perfectly. The fields are generally smaller. Like you won't typically have more than maybe 25 or 30 people in a race at a time. Especially at lower or more amateur levels, the races will get pretty strung out. You'll have space to yourself. And on the track side of things too, you'll be running for time more often. Whether it's just trying to hit a PR or trying to qualify for a meet, try to hit a time standard, whatever it is, your race times are going to be a little bit more important, I guess. But that's not all the time. Championship meets are all about position. It doesn't matter what time you run. You just want to cross that line first, or cross that line in whatever your goal to finish is. And those championship meets are usually a collection of the best athletes, at that level, whatever it's at. So things are typically more competitive. At the very high end, look at the Olympic 10K this year. There's 12 guys right with each other, in a 10,000 meter race down to just a couple laps to go. It's crazy competitive, and person with the fastest time doesn't always win. And we've talked about it before at the 1500. That's been especially true. Ingebrigtsen's probably the fittest guy out there, but he's doesn't usually walk away with that gold in the 1500. It's kind of been a trend recently. So take that competitiveness of a track championship and multiply the size of the field by 10 and throw in grass, dirt, hills, mud, puddles, whatever it is. And that's what you're looking at for cross-country races. So if you're focusing too much on running an even pace in a cross-country race, you risk getting left behind. If you watch the start of a big cross-country race, no matter what level, it's usually always a stampede. There's tons of people and they're all going out fast. It might seem like it makes sense when that happens to kind of let people go, run at an even pace, and then as everyone's going out faster and falling off, you pick them off as the race goes on. And in track, that can kind of work, but in cross country, you're dealing with, potentially hundreds of people that you're going to have to move your way through. And in theory, if you're running even pace and everyone else has gotten out super fast, you should be able to just kind of plow through everybody in the middle of the race, as your pace stays the same and everyone else falls off. But the reality is, once you're out on that course, it's very difficult to move up. You really have to exert yourself, put a lot of energy into moving through everybody, moving through traffic. Even if you're the fittest guy in the field, it's still going to be a tough task to pick up 60 places or something in the middle mile of a 5K. It's just a tall order. And the longer you wait in a race to start moving, the harder it's going to be, because things spread out. People at the front are going to get further ahead. People in the back are going to be falling off a little bit. So that gap that the physical distance from first place to 100th place is going to get wider and wider. So the way to handle this, I think, is the first 1 to 2 minutes of a race, you want to be getting to a place that is pretty close to where your like goal finishing position is. Most of the time, people will finish within around 10 places of where they start. Passing people takes mental energy as well as physical energy. If you are like a mile into a race and look up and see, 40 people to get by, to get to the place that you want to be at, it can be a daunting affair. But if you take advantage of that early part of the race, get out in that good position, within 10 spots of where you want to be, that's also physically demanding. You're going to have to get out, but mentally it's going to be a lot less stressful. You might just need to get out like a few seconds faster for that first K or that first mile. And in a super competitive field, there's just a swarm of people. Even if your first mile is like 3 to 5 seconds faster, that might put you, 20 or 30 places higher just by doing that. And that's 20 or 30 places that you don't have to worry about making up later. And like I said, it's true, you'll be faster, you'll be more fatigued, but the only thing you have to stress about is just holding that position. You don't have to worry about charging through the field. If you've gotten to that position, a lot of times the middle section of a race, of a cross-country race, is not about like passing more people, it's just about holding on or falling off less than the people around you. And holding on is good. Picking up more spots at the end of a race is great. The best teams, the fittest people are going to be the ones who are going to be able to do more than just hold on. They'll be able to, keep moving forward, make a push like the last mile or last few minutes of a race. The teams who are doing that are usually the teams that are winning these meets. And when we see it on a big stage every year with NCAA cross country, the start is always a stampede. Everybody is packed in together and running super fast. It's just chaos. So if you look at like the good teams, if you look at like last year, like NAU, Oklahoma State, Arkansas, they are up at the front at the beginning. They're not wasting time in the back. Even though if whatever time they end up running, if you even it out, their first mile is going to be probably a little too fast. But they are going to want to be up at the front where they need to be and just kind of maintain and work from there than having to be back in the just chaos and swarm of people. It's also more than just passing people or not. When you're in that mess of people, you can risk, falling, getting tripped up. There's all sorts of trouble that can and will happen back there. And I can kind of say this from experience. I've had good races where I got out where I need to be and everything was great. And then there's been races where I got out way too slow and just was working like crazy to make up ground and ended up finishing lower than I probably should have or needed to. There's one race in particular senior year I can remember. Really, realistically, I probably should have won the race fairly handily, but for some reason I got out in like 30th or 40th place and was just way out of it and had to just put it all on the line trying to pass people like all throughout the middle of the race and use tons of energy. And I eventually did make it up to the lead, but I wasn't able to win the race. I got out-kicked, but the thing is, I was probably the fittest guy in that field, and I was still not able to win that race with my bad start. I shouldn't have even been in a position to be, kicking it in. I feel like I should have been like 20 meters ahead. But I put myself in that position by, not being where I needed to be early and just spilling my guts out trying to pass people. And my coach in college liked to say, if you want to win a race, you need to be in the race. And that's what we've been talking about. That's what I've experienced. That's what you see at the NCAA. And it's true for individuals. It's true for teams. Like I said, any good team is going to be putting themselves where they need to be early on and able to hang on versus just way out the back door and just storming through everybody in the middle of the race. And it's not just about winning a race either. Whatever position you are hoping to finish in, that's kind of where you need to be focused on, whether that's winning a race or finishing 10th, 50th, 100th, whatever it is, the same principle, applies. So next time you're in a big cross-country race, or really any big race with like a large field where you're trying to place as high as you can, just get into the race. Don't be looking at your watch. Don't be worried about pace. Where you need to be focused on what's going on around you, what's happening right in front of you. Be present with what's going on. It's called racing for a reason. If you wanted to just run a time trial, you could do that on your own. You can do that on a track somewhere. Cross country is a whole different animal than a lot of other types of racing. It's tough, it's hard, but that's what makes it rewarding. And I think that's why a lot of people do it. So hopefully this helps you in your next race. And if you're watching a race, like when NCAA's comes around, just take a look and see what the guys on the top teams are doing. I bet you won't find them very far back in that first 2 or 3 minutes. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.